All right. Welcome back, everybody, to this week's Creative Briefs. If you are listening in Twitter Spaces, just be aware that we are live streaming on YouTube as well. So you'll hear all of our voices coming out of one Ken's sort of audio stream. But there's two of us here. I'm Greg. Ken.
Hello. How's it going? Welcome back, everybody.
All right. Well, let's get into it. I think we got a bunch of news to cover. So.
Yeah, sure. Do we want to skip all the housekeeping stuff? Just dive right into it?
Yeah, we can do it. We can jump right through it real quick, just in case everyone's there. But yeah. So yes, welcome back. This is Creative Briefs, our weekly news show where we cover the latest news from the creator economy. We're here usually on Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Wait, we have two Pacific times in that. Eastern time. So yeah, if you are in the creator economy or working around it, by all means, it's a great resource. I do think we're thinking about switching this over to just be a full-time space.
Yeah.
So probably by next week, we'll have that running for sure. But other than that, let's go through. And this is episode 25 of the show, actually. So happy Friday, February 11th. We do stream 3 times a week. On Tuesdays, we do our office hours. For the past few weeks, we've been working on building and launching an NFT project. On Wednesdays, we have our interview series called Creative Economy. And then, of course, this show on Fridays. Do give us a follow. We are Creative Economy almost everywhere. So on YouTube, Twitter, wherever it may be. So we welcome you sharing some of your attention with us. So we're definitely Creative Economy over on Twitter as well. We are doing an AMA drop. So if you don't know what AMA is, it is the official coin of the show. It is a rally-backed creator coin. So if you like free money, feel free to head over to bit.ly/AMA-drop-20. And you can grab some free money from us. All right. And that's it for this part. Let's get into the news this week, Ken.
Sounds good. All right. So we have a handful of interesting stories to talk about today. Koji just keeps churning out all these different apps left and right. And last week we talked about, actually 2 weeks ago, we had Dimitri Shabiro on, the CEO of Koji, who announced a $20 million new round of funding. Then the following week, they announced that, hey, we're now allowing people to allowing creators to withdraw their earnings in Bitcoin using their crypto wallet. And now this week, they've launched Koji has launched an NFT storefront app, which is basically which allows them to circumvent OpenSea to a certain degree. Basically, the general gist is that you set up the NFT storefront. That's the name of the app. By linking your crypto wallet with Koji, and then it'll auto-populate with the NFTs that you have listed on OpenSea. Anyone can go onto the NFT Storefront app and browse, purchase, and even transfer that NFT to their own wallet without leaving that link in bio profile. So this is all circumventing going into other apps. It's all happening, I guess, through that one click that you get from someone's social media profile. Greg, it's more added convenience. I'm not sure. I think this is what we're seeing are a lot of these different ways to gain access into that marketplace, because everything all ties back into OpenSea. But I think that there's a lot of defragmentation when it comes to accessing NFTs. Should there be a little bit more? Things be a little bit more simplified, or is this kind of like a natural way to go?
You mean just more storefronts to OpenSea, or just having more actual marketplaces?
I think I just think having access to, because I think on one hand, if you think about like the all roads essentially right now point to OpenSea's marketplace, because they're the dominant thing, right? Because eventually you'll have
the weekend's over. I have a feeling Coinbase's new NFT marketplace is about to roll out.
Well, yeah, I think I've gotten an email saying that that's about to roll out. I don't know when that's supposed to roll out, but the point here is there's different ways to access it, right? It's like you don't have to go to OpenSea directly to get to browse or purchase or discover NFTs anymore, right? I mean, that's obviously the more straightforward way. But then you can go into, with like, for example, Koji's NFT storefront. It's kind of circumventing, it's driving traffic away from going to OpenSea. OpenSea wins either way, because they'll get whatever transaction costs or fees are associated with it, right? But instead, you're going directly to that creator, and you're going into like the link in bio. You're going into.
Well, I guess I mean, if this is just additional shelf space, right, for your NFTs or retail space, sure. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I think it's it's an interesting move. I think it's interesting in two ways, I guess, to me, right? Like in one way, OpenSea is a behemoth, but if you look at something like Looks Rare, which did started like a month ago or something, it has a pretty tremendous amount of volume already, relatively speaking, for its age. Because OpenSea is like, I forgot, it's like 5 or 6 years old. It's not like not a new company. But because of the composability and because of the availability of this data, like everywhere, right? Like you can build a marketplace, right? Like Coinbase can build a marketplace, right? And crypto.com has its own marketplace. And, obviously there's Magic and on many other Solana marketplaces. So, can Koji build one? Sure. Is it going to be as successful as probably like a mainstream or sort of dedicated one? I don't know. That's a little harder to tell. My guess is in the short term, no, right? Because my guess is ultimately that I think like obviously most people aren't into NFTs yet. And so most creators likely don't have an audience that knows what an NFT is yet. Will this change? Yes, because I think I think we'll probably cover this in some of our other articles, but we've already covered like YouTube has talked about doing NFTs. Twitter is likely going to end up doing it. They're supporting NFTs already, and they're likely going to mint them. Reddit said they're going to mint NFTs. Who else was it? Cameo's doing NFT. Like every major social platform is basically somehow natively doing NFTs, right? That's going to bring all of the audience with it. And so, I think once that happens, I think like it'll be very interesting to have like a Koji storefront that can show the NFTs I've already created in all of these social platforms that I'm already using.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense, because it's like, instead of like, I think creators having to, maybe develop their own like native app where you go and you can get access to all their, specific content. It's like, oh, it's right there through the power of the web. It's universally accessible, and it's a one-stop shop for not only their content, but hey, you want to know about my NFTs, instead of driving away that traffic or that attention, and say, hey, go to my OpenSea.io/ whatever URL. Yeah. Just go to that. They only need to remember one.
Now, the one thing I will say that I really like about this feature is, if you click on most NFT projects, right, from Twitter, right, like, and if they're linking through to like a link tree or something, it's an extra click, right? Like to get to it. And, so reducing the friction, I think like if you still have like a sales mindset, like it'd be great to be able to have my NFTs like visible right there in that first link without, having to like go to like 2 more links to get to seeing them. So I think I think this is an interesting feature. I think it's probably an early feature, right? Like it's probably servicing a fairly small universe, but I guess like, to that point, if we look at NFT projects and maybe DAOs that were previously selling NFTs and stuff like that, I do think there's certainly enough people who care about it for it to be useful.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dimitri and his team all of a sudden next week announce, "Hey, we're launching a DAO app." On Koji. And like, dude, like every single week they have something, a new app. It's like they're just churning it out. It's like, okay, whatever. Anyway. We'll have to talk to Dimitri about we'll just have to get their roadmap and then we'll just schedule it on the show. Okay, moving on to our next one. Speaking of NFTs, OnlyFans. You're talking about how, everyone's getting to NFTs, right, Greg?
Yeah. Literally everyone.
So they're following suit with Twitter and similar with Reddit. You're not going to have like NFTs for outside for like specifically a big larger case. This is only for the profile pic, right? Your avatar will be will be powered through, I think it was OpenSea. Usually that's probably going to be the case. So only NFTs minted on the Ethereum blockchain will be supported. They'll be denoted by the Ethereum icon. And when you click on the profile picture, you'll get taken to that creator's, I guess, collection or library from OpenSea. Now, this is only the first step, apparently, because OnlyFans is saying that, hey, this is, quote, "This feature is the first step in exploring the role that NFTs can play in our platform." So could this be a nice way could this be a way to circumvent allowing, those like maybe sex workers or those that are engaged in more adult content to exist on OnlyFans without violating the OnlyFans's a ban? I don't know. I mean, Greg, like
I thought they undid that ban.
I don't think they necessarily undid the ban. I'm not sure though. But
I mean, I don't know. This seems.
No, you're right. OnlyFans walked back the decision after revealing changes were, quote, "no longer required due to banking partners." Yeah. So
I don't know. I mean, sure. I mean, I guess, but this is a little weird because this is just like letting the OnlyFans creator feature their NFT like as a profile pic.
Yeah,
right?
that's basically it right now.
But I'm pretty sure that no one there is there for your NFT profile pic. So I don't really get this particular part. Like, I think like if OnlyFans was like saying, "Hey, I'm gonna allow the minting of NFT passes," or if they were going to be doing starting to like help OnlyFans creators unlock or expose like more levels of utility around their platform, that would make a lot more sense to me. But this seems just like a Me Too kind of like stupid feature.
But I one thing I also wonder is, and this might be just like, what is really art? I
have no problem with the art. It's just more like like certain kind of clientele. No,
I agree with you, right? But then it's like, what happens? It gives them an opportunity it gives the creators the opportunity to monetize, additional steps to monetize or to make money from it, right? I mean, it's great. Like, sure, if a creator wants to go into a digital art, fine, let them do that. But are there policies on OpenSea that they could run afoul of, right? because yeah, you can host, you can mint, you can
No, but
store
your
your
NFTs don't
artwork.
need to come from OpenSea. Like they can read NFTs from the blockchain directly if they want. There's any number of ways to read the.
Well, according to the according to the TechCrunch article, they said on OnlyFans, only NFTs minted on the Ethereum blockchain will be supported, and they will be denoted by an Ethereum icon. When users click on an NFT profile picture, they will see more information about the digital asset from OpenSea.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that there's no coupling here, right? Like OpenSea doesn't give a crap. Like if you how you use the profile, and I mean, like they have an API ostensibly. Most of the API is free. Like this part is actually free. You don't even need, an API key to do what they're describing here.
Mm.
So I don't see any risk here at all, right? Like, and if they wanted to not use OpenSea, they can just stop using OpenSea. Like they can just literally connect to your wallet and pull the NFT info out of it.
Okay. Who's a fan of Tumblr? Tumblr got. Didn't you have a Tumblr back in the day? I don't know.
I
Right?
have one. I mean, I remember meeting David Karp once on a flight like ages ago,
Yeah.
flying from SF to New York.
Oh yeah, I've heard this story, but yeah. So Tumblr got obviously started by David Karp, sold to Yahoo for like $1 billion. Then Tumblr got sold to Automatic. So Matt Mullenweg, his organization owns Tumblr now. Saved it from a grisly death, so to speak. So Tumblr has announced a tip jar feature. I mean, not surprising. Great offering, I suppose. But here's some interesting tidbits here. So Tumblr's not taking any cuts from tipping. The only thing that those that are tipping will have to account for is that there's a standard credit card fee, and that this is all going to be outside of Apple and Google's internal billing system. So creators won't be charged an extra 30%. So there's no additional, and fans are able to send tips of up to $100 each time. So I mean, now that I guess now that Tumblr has kind of been cleaned up, so to speak, so it's not full of, porn and explicit adult content. I guess they want to make it a little bit more creator friendly, and here you go.
Well, think about it. Tumblr had the chance to be OnlyFans, right?
That's true. Well, no, that's very true. Well, minus the subscription, like their subscription aspect was lacking. I mean, I think they kind of had the content to be like an OnlyFans, but they would need to have done more to build up like that membership subscription type of model to do that, I guess. I don't know. It's a nice step. It's kind of a nice addition for creators. You might remember,
and the relevance of. I mean, I just don't understand who uses it. I mean, I'm just probably disconnected from the audience, but I don't know what the sweet spot for Tumblr is anymore.
Well, I think it's if you want like bite-sized content. I mean, you kind of don't really get that on like Medium.
But who's the core audience of Tumblr now? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know I mean, I don't think it's necessarily
like aren't all the Gen Z kids on TikTok now? Like,
Yeah.
So isn't TikTok a better replacement for Tumblr, like for that audience? And if you want a grown-up blog, like you would use WordPress or you would use something else, right? I don't see you using Tumblr to do it.
Yeah, I think it's still very much that.
Is this like one of those old cult nostalgia things? Like there's just a whole bunch of hardcores and that's it.
Probably. Like I kind of feel like I would want to use Tumblr, but I just don't know why I would want to use it. Like it's there. I'm like, I want to. It's. I gotta use it for something, but I don't know what. It's just like being on there, and then you're like, just let it accrue cobwebs. You're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't just I have that URL. I have a Tumblr account. That's all I know about. But it'd be interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is all part of a long step process for Tumblr, for Automatic to kind of revitalize Tumblr into some magical vision by 2030 or something like that. I don't know. But all right. Discord. Greg, I know this is your favorite company. So Discord has been testing out a bunch of features or that's coming in down the pipe. Let me just kind of summarize what's going on here. So first of all, there's for some servers, there's going to be a forum like channel that kind of organizes all the conversations. Uh, According to TechCrunch, quote, the idea is that people could dip in and out of these special channels asynchronously and not miss out, the same way they might on Reddit. It's a way to surface older content that it's still relevant and loop people into an ongoing thread, letting conversation topics develop over time. So I think this is Greg. You and I have had this issue where you sign up for a bunch of Discord channels and you're like you walk in, you're like I have no what the hell's going on, and you have to cycle through like 50 billion channels just to you know to grok everything. I think this probably kind of is that good summary of what's going on. Um, Furthermore, some servers that this is being tested on will have an improved homepage like feature that curates trending topics. So it's like a snapshot in time. Like, hey, this is this is the stuff that you need to know right now, like about what's going on. It's not everything, but this is the stuff that most people are talking about. So you're kept in the loop. There's additional admin tools that are coming in that basically will replace third-party moderation tools that people use, such as welcoming new users, detecting bad behavior, or even banning those that violate the rules. So all of these features are in closed beta, and a select group of servers are being asked to participate in this. So that's coming down the pipe. No idea when that's going to be available to everyone, but it's just kind of, I guess, improving the quality of content on Discord. Any thoughts, Greg?
Well, I think it's highly needed from the ecosystem. I think Discord has been shoehorned sort of into a community platform role where I think it's largely still optimized as a chat platform. And so I think, we all suffer as a result of it not adapting, I think I would say quickly enough to sort of like the enhance, so if for example, like most of the capability of Discord is actually now having to be added in through like extensions and bots, right? And like one, I think that's awesome, and I appreciate that that's there, and that bit of programming that's possible. But because of that stuff happening sort of at arm's length as opposed to like natively, there's a lot of challenges. It means like Discord has like just been like their most meaningful change has probably been like adding stages, and the rumored but I have not seen yet sort of paid subscriptions to servers. But server discovery is still horrible. Like hell, seeing your own list of servers is already a pain in the ass. And I think like on top of that, most people would argue that they have a tremendously hard time of figuring out what the hell happened in a Discord that after they go away for 5 minutes, right?
Right.
Because it's either like there's no one there, or it's like so overwhelming that like you just give up on trying to succeed in it, right? So I think that this is much needed, to the extent that I think Discord wants to have a future, in this space, right?
Yeah.
Because unlike like say like in a traditional org where you have Slack, but there's email and there's other manifestations of like context and things that are going on, Discord doesn't have that equivalent. It doesn't have the benefit of like your Google Workspace accompanying your sort of Slack, right? Or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, there's a lot that gets lost, I think, in a Discord. And I'm glad to see them trying to, shape the space better for everyone, because like there's a lot needed.
Yeah. I think it's at that point where I don't want to say it's like necessarily at the where it has a lot of technical debt, but I think it's a point where and maybe it's recognizing that there's a lot of information overload that's taking place, because it's seeing this uptick in adoption, especially from the Web3 side. And so the more people that get on there, the more conversations that take place, the chatter everything becomes, and then that up boils that frustration people have, where it's like I can't use Discord because it just feels there's one, this notification overload, and two, there's so many unreads. Like I just can't deal with it. Like I just don't know where to go because you are, I guess, unlike Slack, you might have way more servers on Discord that you subscribe to versus on Slack, because obviously Slack is like, I think the average person might be subscribed to maybe like one or two Slack channels or Slack workspaces, if you will, right?
I have a
Um,
lot of Slacks too, actually. I
do
mean,
you?
I feel like it's a little more discerning, right? Like
It's different
2, 3,
intent.
4, 5, 6. I have 10 Slacks, like
How many
in
are
my desktop, right?
yeah, how many are active though? Like do you spend on a daily basis?
Well, you see, the difference is, I think, like this is to your point. A Slack tends to represent, or well, let me see. I do work. Some of these I don't even need anymore. You're right. Like
Right.
I could definitely get rid of them. But yeah, I do. I think of like Slack's more like just like work streams. Like there's some kind of effort or like responsibility associated with it. And when I think of my Discords, I'm like, I like practically speaking don't need to go to any of them,
Yeah.
right? Like
It's largely, it's probably you're more passive on
yeah,
Discord,
mhm,
but way more active on Slack because obviously there's
yeah.
a personal responsibility
Well,
associated with that.
I've looked at this, by the way. Slack's revenue last year, I think, was like $1 billion,
Yeah.
right? And Discord's revenue was like 150 million. Um, so
But
something
then
that makes
the
work.
question is like where are they getting the money from? That's what one question you keep asking is like where how do they make money? How does Discord make money? And
Yeah. Well, I guess I figured out how they make money, but boosts basically.
yeah.
However, it's proof though that helping deliver work is more valuable than like helping to deliver conversations, I guess.
Well, enterprise is always like enterprise isn't necessarily the most glamorous thing, but it's always been the one that makes a lot more money than consumer. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of been the rule in tech. But yeah, I mean, I think look, there's a lot more conversations that happens on Discord probably, and it gets flooded and dated. So it's like as people are, and then I'm just going to take this more as an anecdote. Like if you're in more in like the Web3 space, you probably sign on more than one or two or five Discord servers. It's like, hey, for this particular collection, or how many different collections you're a part of. And so when you hop from one place to another, it's like, oh my God, where am I supposed to start? Because if you haven't checked in after like, a couple days, you're like, you walk in, you're like, I have no idea. You're completely lost. You need someone to guide you. This is probably going to help. And for those that are managing multiple servers, like the extra moderation tools are great. Obviously, Discord wants to bring doesn't want a lot of people to use third-party moderation tools or admin tools, so they're building them natively into them. That's kind of expected. I don't think not necessarily surprising. Um, but overall, this is a nice way for Discord to tackle information overload, their information overload problem. So, um, speaking of the enterprise, before we dive back into the NFT world, Alchemy. This is actually the first time I've heard of Alchemy, but they've been around for quite some time. I heard this from from a TechCrunch reporter I'm friends with. So they've raised at 10 point raised $200 million at a $10.2 billion valuation. And what's fascinating about this to me is not necessarily a massive valuation or that they raised, is how they're trying to position themselves. They want to be the AWS of the blockchain and of Web3. So obviously we know AWS, Amazon Web Services, is growing gangbusters. It's like a phenomenal product for Amazon. And it's the infrastructure that a lot of the apps that we use are built on. And so what Alchemy wants to do is very similar to that. Um, so and like Greg, do we need an AWS for the blockchain? Like,
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
have you heard of others that are trying to do this besides Alchemy?
yeah, there's a company called Morales, which has also raised, I think, like $20 million in its last round. which is sort of trying to be the Google Firebase kind of thing to the blockchain. The blockchain is very complicated because of all the basically decentralized parts means that there's a broader and wider ecosystem of things to connect to. Store, and everything's like sort of reinvented, right? Like storage is reinvented, access control, all these other pieces sort of have to be reconsidered. Eventing, sort of like analytics, like all these parts are changing. So I think like, yeah, it's a pretty complicated space. Now, is someone going to beat Amazon to being the Amazon of, Web3? Like that's an interesting question, I guess, right? Because, fundamentally to build something that's the AWS of Web3 is at heart building a centralized service, right? That has native hooks into Web3 or services that basically, tap into like underlying Web3 parts, right? So, I don't know. It's an interesting place to be, or at least the analogy maybe falls down because AWS is like tending to provide the compute part, the storage part, like all these other parts. So the software layer, if you're not providing something centralized, is fairly thin, or relatively thin, right? Like because it's connectivity software, right? Like between a bunch of pieces, not necessarily like you're not providing like sort of like backend analysis, backend storage, like all these other pieces, but if you're really just routing through to, other things. Now, for example, if you want to use IPFS, which is like a massively distributed, or interplanetary file system is what it stands for, right? You could host your own nodes. So maybe you want to use this to host your own nodes on the blockchain. Maybe you want to host your own nodes on IPFS. Maybe you want to host your own nodes on any other, thing that's being stood up. There's room for this for sure. And it's likely going to be important. As we move forward, my big question or concern would just be like, I know one guy who was on the Amazon crypto team like several years ago. Maybe more isn't out there doesn't mean that they're not doing more, right?
Yeah. No, and obviously that's a concern. I'm sure that Alchemy and a bunch of these other companies are obviously weighing like how do you remain competitive should the incumbent cloud providers kind of roll into that space. Amazon's certainly not shy at standing up new clouds, whether it's for government or healthcare or whatever. Like they can quickly just roll these things out. So yeah, if they wanted to get into like the Web3 space, I'm sure Amazon could be like, yeah, all right, here we go. And you're right, they very well could be working on something like that right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with like Google and Microsoft with Azure. But I mean, I think that's something that weighs heavily on these companies, but I don't think should necessarily discourage them from pursuing those type of things. Uh, some stats that I saw in this article. In the last 12 months, the NFT marketplaces that were built on Alchemy have delivered more than 1.5 billion in royalties to artists, with a billion of that coming in the last 3 months. And furthermore, Alchemy's been boasting that it has powered $105 billion worth of annualized on-chain transactions, more than 45 more than than its $45 billion that it shared in October. And so right now it has a team of 50, and it's powered, and obviously those that are built on Alchemy include OpenSea, Adobe, Dapper Labs, and CryptoPunks. So, and then they pay, obviously they pay, customers pay based on the amount of computing they use. Then that's where the AWS type of analogy is apt. So, good on Alchemy, 10.2 billion evaluation. That's massive. That's insane. But we'll see what happens with them and I think obviously, Greg, your concerns are valid in terms of like, can an AWS of the blockchain truly be a decentralized offering, or is there some hint of centralized sprinkled into the mix? So,
Yeah, I think we're still far away from knowing. Like, well, or it ends up that AWS buys an Alchemy, right? Or
But well, that's very true. And AWS isn't shy. And Amazon's like, yeah, fine, $10 billion. Sure, why not? We'll, not batting an eye at that. So back to the world of NFTs and in the enterprise. Apparently, Salesforce is thinking about NFTs. And we're talking about how Amazon's not shy or and can react quickly to standing up new services. So can Salesforce. And so apparently, according to CNBC, Mark Benioff and Brett Taylor, the co-CEOs of Salesforce, told employees at an offsite meeting that they were thinking about doing an NFT cloud service. I mean, that sounds interesting. For the enterprise, though, interesting. But so basically, the point of this NFT service would be allow anybody or allow creators to sell and create and sell their NFTs on OpenSea and other marketplaces. And eventually, like, could Salesforce have its own marketplace as well, like its own OpenSea? I mean, as we were talking about earlier, might as well. Everyone's getting to that. Greg, I mean, it's a business world. Is there a market for NFTs or are NFTs more for consumers?
NFTs are definitely gonna. I mean, like, if you think about for all the people who bellyached about like the blockchain, including me in the past, right? The salient places where blockchain made sense were things like IoT and sort of like in logistics and a whole bunch of other places where sort of the transparency that was afforded to it, that horizontal persistence and all those other things made sense, right? I think we're in a current bubble around NFTs where they are largely viewed through the art lens or sort of the collectible lens, right? But my fundamental belief is that we are moving towards, even the art pieces are moving towards utility. And to that end, if you look at like the opportunity in NFTs for like the business world, it becomes new ways to represent customers. It becomes new ways to represent loyalty. It becomes new ways to ultimately to mine and gather consumer insights, right? Or customer insights. So, and it also becomes a fairly horizontal platform for building and extending your existing platforms, right? Because you're like, hey, like instead of exposing and securitizing like all these pieces, like what we can do is like issue an NFT, and the only way you could have that NFT is like if you pass these 9 gates over here. And by the way, now that that's out there, like all of our internal teams can start to just look for those gates or those keys that we've now minted out into the world, right? So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for the business world. Now, what Salesforce's NFT marketplace or where it fits in the ecosystem, I think may be a pretty different thing, right? Like than probably how we think about OpenSea and if you arguably OpenSeas and these things right now are not designed to actually help you understand utility. They don't actually index the utility that might be associated, right? Like they're just literally trading marketplaces, with maybe some like a little bit of rarity, built in, right? So yeah, you could imagine, right? Like if software licenses were going to be traded, right, or beta access to software is going to be traded, or loyalty programs and were going to be manifested, right, or governance for internal groups or external groups or partner groups or vendors. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could imagine NFTs just being used as a way to short circuit a bunch of things that might otherwise be difficult, or to enable new kinds of thinking. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for a B2B sort of NFT marketplace. We're probably early, right? But I think partially we're early because the use cases aren't out there yet enough, right? Like, and so if you get a behemoth like a Salesforce getting behind it, and they suddenly say, hey, we can NFT or convert to NFTs like, 30% of this data that we have for you now, like, and give it new life or extensibility, then yeah, I think like there's really interesting things that are possible.
Yeah. And, it reminds me of like, I think it was a few years ago or many years ago, where Salesforce announced a cloud specifically around the Internet of Things, right? And so like there's that consumer side. It's like, wait, why are brands getting in? Why are businesses getting into the IoT space? And why, like, what's the tie-in with Salesforce? But it's like that their CRM is key to that whole, is key to everything, right? Because it's like if there's data involved, Salesforce wants to be that storage for all of it. And it kind of feels very contradictory when you say like, hey, Salesforce is getting into NFTs, which has typically been decentralized in its core, but that data is getting stored, could be potentially stored in a centralized in a CRM, right? Um, so I kind of see it, right. You look at, if you want to know, if you want to track where this is going, where an NFT is going, or the access, or all that data that corresponds with it, you're going to need, there's got to be some sort of a database. And so maybe Salesforce wants to do that. Maybe this is a whole part where Salesforce is exploring, hey, let's get, could we build a decentralized version of Salesforce, on the blockchain of some sort, right? I don't know what that would look like, how that would work, um, if that's actually needed. But as we were talking about with, all these other companies that are like, hey, let's, could AWS do like a cloud for Web3? Hell, might as well, like, for Salesforce for a blockchain. I don't know why it feels very weird, but it could potentially happen, right? And I don't think this is an opportunity for, Salesforce wants to continue to innovate. They've been around for 2 decades or so. I'd imagine they're doing phenomenally well as a company, and so they want to be a forefront of innovation and of cloud. So why not go forward with this? So I think it's kind of interesting to see where they go with this, what it would look like, and especially from a like authentication standpoint, that could work out as well. Um, so I don't know. Well, this is all very much early stages, initial. This has just been talked. There's no idea for this. Um, but once Dreamforce, their big company, their customer conference kicks off later this year, maybe there'll be a little bit more buzz around this NFT cloud, whatever it's named at. So, all right. So, I guess moving on to our final two big topics here. Um, YouTube. YouTube's chief product officer, Neil Mohan, uh, published a lengthy blog post this week. I think it was actually, yeah, that was on yesterday, and basically unveiled this whole roadmap for creators that's happening in 2022. Um, and there's a bunch of things, and I'm just going to read these off, and then we can talk about them. Um, there's things around like the metaverse, NFTs, shopping, YouTube Shorts, and other updates. But here's a as it relates to YouTube Shorts, new video effects, editing capabilities, the ability to reply to comments via Shorts, very similar to what you can do on TikTok, and I think also in Instagram Stories. I'm not 100% sure. I kind of vaguely recall that happening. Plus, they're going to be working on new ways to monetize Shorts, such as with supporting branded content, allowing super chat with Shorts, and also allowing you to shop via Shorts. Um, as it relates to NFTs, though no formal plans have been unveiled, some things that they've hinted on, and Greg, I think you and I have talked about this in a couple episodes ago, such as allowing creators to tokenize their videos, photos, art, and experiences as a way to better engage with fans. What that specifically means remains to be seen, but looking forward to that. And they're looking at getting into the metaverse, and obviously starting with gaming, where in which YouTube has a pretty sizable gaming sector and division. Um, Other updates, new insights, ability to do joint live streams, expansion of the gifted memberships, which are basically stolen from Twitch, um, and obviously some YouTube TV updates that aren't really relevant for the show. So, Greg, like, this is a pretty, like, I think as you look at the earnings from the past couple weeks for like these social networks, um, they're basically all looking at like, hey, we want to be all like TikTok. right? We want to copy TikTok. We want to beat TikTok. That's what Facebook and Snap is up to. YouTube's like, all right, we're updating our shorts, and we're also doing shopping, and we're also getting into NFTs, and we're maybe dabble into the metaverse. What is like? Can you any initial thoughts on like what this all means? Like, is YouTube just basically, yeah, we're just going to do our own thing and let everybody else fight it off, and then we're just going to rise up as the victor?
Well, I think YouTube has always been a leader, right, in relative to sort of like how the business model of creators, right? And so some of this stuff I think is just getting to parity, right? Like, so a lot of these features are sort of like saying, great, how do we even out like the engagement model that we've sort of, pushed forward, right? I think the NFT parts, and live shopping. Live shopping to me feels like an evolution, right? Like relative to their existing capabilities, right? Because that behavior has been there. People have been talking about and selling products inside of YouTube videos for a long time. So I think that's a good step. That's a good next step. But I think the crypto side of things ultimately I think represents probably a revolution for YouTube, right? So we've talked about this in the past a couple of times, but it is difficult, and we talked about this with Dimitri actually when he was here last time, is that I think it's fairly difficult for a large organization with an entrenched business model to embrace a new business model, right? But ultimately, you either decide to disrupt yourself or you are disrupted sort of by the world at large, right? And it's still very, very early days. So I think like there's no existential NFT threat to YouTube, right? Like not today, right? Like or sort of imminent threat. Like there may be an existential one, right? But I think like by YouTube saying, hey, this exists because, and I was talking to our friend David Richardson yesterday about like, just when you look at the behavioral profile of these people, this is what's going on. Like the behavior of our creators, like how are we able to stand ourselves up as businesses? Our fans are an important part of the ecosystem. How do we involve them more, right? And so what you may see is that, for example, what I would hope happens, right, is that like collaborations with fans, shared ownership in content creation and production, actually that YouTube, because this business part of business model doesn't exist yet, can actually put that into sort of the Web3 part of the house without actually disrupting much of the existing sort of Web2 advertising based, opportunity that they currently service, right? So you could imagine, for example, YouTube says, hey, you can now put in escrow X% of your payments, right? Like your revenue from YouTube, and have it go over into a wallet or into a DAO, right? Like that is owned by your fans, right? Like, and this I was talking to the guys, in our Slack, and this is the missing piece, right? Is there is an accountability of the dollars that actually are made. Like there is no escrow service yet to say like, okay, fine. Because like right now, like a YouTuber can say, sure, I'll give you 10% of my earnings, but how do I know what you earned? Right. And then what if I see what you earn, but I don't have, like, you decide to just change where the money goes. Right. Like, so, if YouTube actually got in the game of like helping you stand up the DAO, where they could then guarantee, for example, one, the visibility into like how the performance that was happening, two, the availability and the transfer of the dollars, the fiat into that ecosystem, they create a great pipeline for themselves, right? Like versus like pretending is not happening, right? Or not embracing sort of the model and then basically losing out, or being completely disrupted by it in the future.
No, and I agree. Those are good points. I think that right now this is, this is when you look at YouTube, like obviously they've invested heavily on shorts, and that's the status quo in terms of these social platforms. Like, hey, short form video is the way to go right now. And so you see TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Snap and YouTube all saying, hey, let's go into, this is where we put our money into for content creators. And I think based on this, just looking at this blog post, it is showing, at least what it comes across of, and this might be just very good PR spin, is that YouTube's like, hey, we this is the stuff we're coming out now in 2022, but they're also showing off like what they can do at scale for the future in terms of innovating for potential creators. And you're right, so they're dabbling in Web3, they're dabbling in a metaverse, or at least they're saying they are, but they're not offering any concrete steps saying, yeah, this is what we're going to do with the metaverse, or this is what we're going to do with NFTs, or but this is the stuff that potentially could happen. And it's showing off that it's at least hinting to creators like, hey, this is, out there, and we're not just, betting the whole farm on shorts. We're not betting the whole farm on this. And I think it's somewhat different from like a Facebook side, which kind of totally rebranded the entire company to Meta and says, hey, we're going all in on a metaverse, but it finds itself still struggling from as a traditional social network. And the same thing from like Snap, which Snap is very much all invested in being a short form video. And same thing with TikTok. But I think there's more, I guess, I don't want to use the word scalability all this time, but it's like it's showing it has some range. YouTube has some range for, they're seeing that in 2022, the NFT, like rolling out an NFT product or the metaverse is going to be in play, as opposed to saying, oh, we're doing this by 2025. It's like, no. We see some actual valuability for this in 2022. We just don't know what it looks like right now. Right. So,
yeah, I think it's all upside for them though, right? Like that's the beauty of it, right? Is sort of like they get a non-dilutive, if they were to do what I just described, they have nothing to lose really, right? Because it's already the money that they're making, and they're just saying, great, if you want to divert some of it to somewhere else, we'll help you, right? Yeah. And that builds and buys a bunch of goodwill, I think, like in the community, and it will keep people, I think, attached or loyal sort of to the Facebook side of the house as well.
Yep. And then moving on to our final article comes from The Information. It's an interesting insight. The headline is "From TikTok to Twitch, Employees Juggle Conflicts While Moonlighting as Influencers." And we talked many times on the show. We've hinted on it, where companies are hiring creators to work within them. But what happens when you work inside these social companies, such as Meta / Facebook, Snap, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok, and you wind up becoming a creator yourself? How do you handle potential conflicts of interest, right? And so this is if you have access to the information, this is a worthwhile article to read. It's pretty lengthy. I'll give you some just snippets here from The Information, from verbatim, that's written from reporter Kaya Yuriev, such as employees could bring in. One of the worries is that they could encourage their own employees to moonlight as creators, but they're increasingly juggling conflicts of interest that can arise from the practice. Some worries are employees could bring embarrassment to their companies by producing distasteful content, or, depending on how prodigious their creative output is, could raise questions about just how committed they are to their day jobs. Also, she cites Patreon as an example, as a company that has been embracing this kind of hybrid role, encouraging employees to pursue their creator dreams, such as Jack Conte, who is his own creator and musician. Policies regarding this practice vary from company to company, but most say they evaluate situations on an individual basis for conflicts of interest and decide whether to restrict an employee from, say, cutting a sponsorship deal with a brand based on the employee's role at the company. Greg, if you were running a company and you had people who were moonlighting as creators, like, how would you address this? Obviously, like, should they have access to creator funds?
No.
Knowing so they have lower status than outside creators.
No, I don't think so. But I really like the approach that TikTok took, and Snap goes even further, I believe, in there. You're not allowed to take tips either at Snapchat if you work there, right? So I think this is great. Like, for just the product person in me says that, like, hey, if you're making tools for creators, the more creators you have in your staff, the more acutely they understand sort of the problems of the customer, and they're also going to have a bit more empathy, in supporting them and engaging with them over time, right? I think this age of sort of polywork is upon us, right? Like, so I think like the idea that people are going to do one thing is quickly becoming like a new reality for a lot of folks, right? Like where I'm actually looking or waiting to see when, like, I've been trying to track this actually, like, of are people just our companies started hiring people less and just relying more on contractors, like because people want the freedom or the flexibility to do 2 or 3 things at the same time, as opposed to like being fully sort of engaged and committed. So I think it makes a lot of sense ultimately, like that, that these companies in particular have a lot of creators there. Does it make sense for every company? That's a little harder to say, right? Because it depends on the kind of like, there's always like risks of conflict of interest. Like a lot of folks, from the olden days, like, would have to put disclosures and whatnot, like, on their Twitter accounts and things like that. And I think like as social media becomes like this bigger hornet's nest of things, one of the challenges I do think that you like kind of have to navigate a lot more clearly is like, am I doing this as my company? Am I doing this because I learned about something in my company, even if I'm not officially doing it? Like, it's kind of like these people in Congress, right? Like where they're making investments, and it's like, well, if I squint, I could see like why you might do it, but did you hear something at work, right? Like, and is that why you think this is a good place to be, or was that why you're covering this topic? And I think like the building in public, the transparency is a good thing overall for everybody. But
should there be a blanket? Like, I think what I like is that it's I think according to the article is that it's more of a case by case basis, right? They're taking it by a case by case, right? A situation. It's not a blanket policy saying, hey, if you're going to be a creator, you cannot accept, I mean, obviously there should be some blanket things like, yeah, we're going to allow you to be creators if you want, but no, you should not be participating in creator funds. You should not be accepting tips or this, but you can do blah, blah, blah. Should there be something more like a universal rule, or should it be more case by case type, obviously based on what type of creator they are, right? It's like, oh, you're a creator that is that does cooking, right? You're a cooking creator, or you're a outdoor creator, or you're a tech creator. Like, obviously, like one should get different circumstances, different rules versus the other. Like, what would your thoughts?
I think those things sort of exist already, right? Like, a lot of times, like for example, when you join like a startup, there's these agreements you have to sign, these SEPA agreements, which are basically like, you're identifying all the intellectual property that you own. You're identifying, I think we've done these in the past too, right? Like you're stating like whatever projects you may have going on, because you want to be upfront, like one, so that the company can't claim ownership to the things that you're doing. But also so that any IP that you may have already is either yours, or in some cases it has to be surrendered, right? Like like as a contractor, for example, right? Like you're doing work where the IP is not yours. So I think it does create some interesting challenges. Oh crap, I do have to go though. So I'm going to pop out. Ken, let you close up the show.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. But you know what? That's all the articles we have. But thanks everyone for joining, and looking forward to chatting with you all next week for our other episodes of the Creative Edition, Creative Economy, Creative Briefs, and Creative Works. We'll talk to you guys later. See you.